Okay, so the title of this video is I asked 100 TFT players how to hit Challenger by me, Frodan. I sent out a Google Forms survey and asked them a bunch of different questions, and I wanted to know what core skills Challenger players value, 2 habits of a Challenger player, like what do they actually do both in and out of game, 3, do they think other Challenger players are good? I asked them a bunch of other frivolous questions like, hey, do you think you're good? You think other Challenger players are good? And 4, can anyone actually hit Challenger? Do they think that's something that other people can do? And I asked a bunch of questions. So I'm pretty proud of this, and I hope that people enjoy this presentation. I think it's really fun. Okay, so the first thing is, who actually responded to this survey? I somehow got more than 100 people to respond in the first place. I had 126 people respond, including top TFT players, world champions, TFT creators, new challengers, former challengers, and even Riot people responded. That's right. I reached out to people at Riot to ask them what they thought about this survey as well, because I figured getting a diverse set of experiences. Some people might think it's not even worth getting this kind of information from people who are first-time challengers or one-time challengers, but I still think there's value in doing that because you get perspective. Theoretically, it's harder to hit Challenger now than it ever was before, because at the very beginning of the game, people were a lot worse fundamentally. And so I wanted to get experience from people who, one, used to hit Challenger and maybe they don't right now, so what worked for them back then, but also people who may have had the first time they ever hit Challenger, like set 9 or set 10, right? Or even set 11, but I don't think I got anybody who's first time Challenger for set 11. So then the question is, like who did you end up getting? So I ended up asking world champions like Replay from set 8 from North America, Title from Japan actually replied to this survey, which was really cool. I asked him and he said, oh, Frodaniel-san, thank you so much for contacting me. I will happily fill out the survey. He was very cute, very respectful. And Malala, of course, he's a homie. He also answered this survey from the Set 10 World Champion. I got TFT creators like K3 Soju, Boxbox, Leduc, Kiyun, Bunny Muffins. I got a bunch of people who say, hey, I focus on TFT mainly for the content. And yes, maybe I do play things for the competitive side as well, but I also mainly focus on my TFT content itself. We got top players like Solo Gasong, Wet Jungler, Michael, Wage Iverson. I felt it was important to toss out a wide net across regions. So we have people from Japan, we have people from EU, specifically like Germany and Spain and France and other different sub-regions within EMEA, even LATAM, because I asked Michael, who played in that previous tournament we just watched. And I got Riot Challenger players like Mortdog, who has hit Challenger, by the way. Did you know Mortdog hit Challenger in set 7 Dragonlands and he almost quit TFT because of that grind? It was kind of crazy. It was kind of crazy. So the Riot Challenger players like Mortdog, Inigo, Trucy, and Chalky, I asked a bunch of people to respond to it, and I thought that it was valuable to get all of their information. So before we start, though, I think it's important to establish why even care about being TFT Challenger? Because the reality is, I think a lot of people feel like it's not important to be TFT Challenger. It's just a for fun game mode. It doesn't even have its own standalone client. It's just part of League of Legends. So why even care about TFT Challenger? It's just like, isn't that kind of a fake gaming achievement? It's easier than it is in other games. And I came up with 3 core reasons why you should care about being a TFT Challenger. Reason number 1, it's hard. It's actually hard to hit Challenger. It's easier to hit Challenger maybe in TFT than it is to League of Legends, but it doesn't mean that it's easy, period. Just because it's easier in one game doesn't make it a bad achievement. It's hard to hit TFT Challenger, and hard things are worth doing. I think that a lot of people really don't understand the percentage of the TFT player base right now. If you hit Challenger, you are 0.01% of the player base. I took my profile. This is my Challenger stats. I consider myself a very average, quintessential average Challenger player. And I'm in the 0.01 percentile, which is probably the first time I've ever been the 0.01 percentile of almost anything. And that's something that I think is noteworthy, an achievement. Now, I know that part of that is because a lot of people play casually, but I still think that even separating yourself from that amongst the giant number of players, like look at how many players are here, right? Like I'm showing you guys the player base in Asia Pacific alone, in Vietnam. If you hit Challenger in Vietnam, you are the 0.0001% in Vietnam, which is insane amount of cutoff in terms of everybody else from the player base. And so to be able to achieve something like that in anything, in any category, being in the 0.01 percentile is an amazing achievement. I think that's worth recognition. You should be proud of yourself for hitting it. Now, the reason why I'm bringing up the second part of this is that I'm playing a game right now with my family and my wife called Monopoly Go. It's a mobile game that you can only do one thing. You only hit this go button and you roll a die and you walk around this Monopoly Go board and you just collect money. Every single space you land on, you just collect money. And if you get enough money, you can use it to build buildings that I have here highlighted on the right. And that's just the game. That's all you do. There's no such thing as losing in this game. There's no possible way you can lose in Monopoly Go, because this is what the game is. You just press go, you go around the board, you collect your money, you shut down some other people's buildings every now and then because you're just this billionaire trying to play the game of capitalism. And that's just the game. It's a slot machine. It's a card opening pack simulator. And this game has made billions upon billions of dollars. It's actually one of the most successful mobile games of the past couple of years because it just has lucrative amount of players who just literally all they do is they play a game that they can't lose in. But TFT is not like that. If you suck, you are not hitting Challenger. If you are bad at the game, you are not hitting Challenger. And I don't care what you tell me about, like, okay, this player's not playing the game correctly or whatnot, or anybody can just like hit Yone or hit any other reroll comp or whatever is the most busted OP thing in the meta game right now. The fact that you can kind of separate yourself, because if it was so easy, everyone would do it. The fact that you can separate yourself, I think, is cool. And I think that it's nice to do these things and achieve these hard, difficult achievements. I think it's actually really cool. Okay, reason number 2. Your mental needs to level up or you will be crushed. TFT is a game that not only is it worth pursuing because it's hard to do, but you will find a lot about yourself in the process. You'll discover a lot about how you handle stress and emotions, how you handle passive aggressive or just straight up aggressive behavior from other players, how you handle your own failures and how you cope with it, whether you make excuses for yourself, whether you get really hard on yourself, or whether you just don't handle it, period, right? Maybe you just are ignorant towards it. Or perhaps you find an inner strength within yourself to be able to overcome things. Because there's this one thing that I've learned over my time of climbing to Challenger. So for background, I've been climbing to Challenger ever since set 5, when that was the first time I went full-time in TFT to try to focus on it. I struggled to maintain Challenger for like a set or two, but I was still getting there every set, and then slowly became easier. But as that time was happening, I was progressing further and further. I realized to myself that I became stronger mentally because of it. Because if you can handle all the BS from TFT, and I had the list here: bad items, bad augments, bad rolls, bad loot drops, opponents grief you, matchmaking RNG, worse than slot carousels, 4 fun portals, encounters, which is the set mechanic of set 11, bugs in the game, fight variants, contested for no reason, contested yet you don't hit, bad balance, legendary odds, streamer flames you, which somehow turns the entire community against you, weird LP losses and gains, the Riot client doesn't work, Riot is on a holiday break, item bench nonsense, why is there so much reading, bag sizes? There's just so many different things that have a reason for you to be upset. And you would be entirely validated. Everyone gets why TFT will tilt you. Everyone knows why TFT is a frustrating game and why you're so mad about it. If the people that play it get it, but the people that are able to overcome will find themselves an inner strength that they didn't know that they had. That is also another big reason why it is worth pursuing, because I think you will grow not just as a video game player, but you will also find yourself and be proud of something that you've achieved because you'll be able to strive for excellence and overcome those hurdles. Reason number 3, the community. And I think that this is one of my favorite reasons. The road to Challenger is unironically the friends you make along the way. It's more fun to yap when someone listens. And if you need evidence, there's so much around it. But TFT is not just a game where you challenge yourself and try to excel and put yourself to the test by measuring all these probabilities and doing all the kind of crazy things. It's also a bonding experience because you suffer so much. And so it feels like if you're able to talk to other people about it, it just becomes another special way that you connect to another gamer that you didn't really know you could form those connections. And I think that's partially what makes TFT so fun as a community, because everyone loves to yap. Just look at the differences between things like the weekly mega rant thread. This is from last week, by the way. Almost 1,000 comments, 900 comments. The weekly discussion for like one of the most popular threads for a Reddit, 100 comments. Just about talking about random daily, like the weekly things, but versus a week of ranting, it's like almost 9x, 10x the amount of passion that you see from people who just love to yap and talk about like, why is this broken? Who let this in through? Is anyone at Riot balancing this? Is anyone like paying attention? How could they let this go through? How could it prove it? That kind of community bond through, I guess, angst and bitterness and jadedness and tiltness is something that actually is kind of special to us. And I think it's partially why that also makes some of the most popular TFT streamers and content creators because I think everyone can understand at its core the reason why Soju yapping is so funny. If you've played even 10 games of TFT, you kind of get why Soju is popular. This has only become reinforced more as I have been into community events, right? When we're able to share really epic moments. Just look at how people are bonding over things like the Vegas LAN or like summits. And these are just only 2 events of hopefully many that are to come, because I think that's the really cool part about it. If you become challenger and you immerse yourself, if you choose to jump into the community, they will receive you. I have yet to see a person, assuming you come in with the right intentions, right? You're not just trying to like come in and take and manipulate and take advantage of everything, but you're just trying to be part of the scene. I have yet to see a person who's regretted it. I think almost everybody has really enjoyed their time being part of the community. Okay, so question number 1, and perhaps the one that I think is important to start off with. What was the most important factor needed to reach challenger the very first time? There's a lot of different possibilities of answers. I gave 5 core ones, which was meta read, mastering comms, memorizing and looking at stats, watching/copying other players, and then if there's another reason, give me another reason. And I think the really interesting thing is that there wasn't a real big consensus. Most of the people in general just gave a bunch of different answers, and there was also like all these different individual answers, which we'll cover in a little bit. But the biggest one that they responded to was improving fundamentals. Yes, you could like, watch and copy other players. Yeah, you could master 1 or 2 comps, and this is their own experience, right? Because they're talking about what they did. Maybe you had the best meta read, tftacademy.com. But most of them agreed, at least, that said that improving your fundamentals, such as econ, positioning, and a bunch of other things that you need to do to improve your fundamental understanding of the game. But the other answers are pretty funny as well. Like one of them, for example, was mental, which was a really big factor, I guess, for this person. I asked them, so what are some other responses? Someone said watching Scar videos, which I guess I don't really understand myself, because right now I don't see many Scar videos in general. But then apparently they went back and said, oh, back in like set 1, set 2, a lot of Scar videos helped me. So there you go. Maybe watching your favorite content creator videos can help. Understanding your strengths and weaknesses, which I think is kind of vague and abstract. That doesn't help many people to be like, well, understand yourself. Let's say you're good at copying people because you can really mimic well based off instruction of what people saying, do 1, 2, 3. And maybe understanding your own strength, that's a way for you to potentially capitalize and get the challenger. Someone said all the above, which I think is appropriate, right? Like, oh, it was just doing everything. Meta read, copying people, or watching streamers, having good fundamentals, so on and so forth. One is the ability to correct your mistakes, which I think is really good. And then more than one person said play a lot of games. One person said play more than 50 games. Someone said play more than 100 games. Someone said just playing a lot more, which is also true. You can't hit challenger unless you are willing to play a lot of games. Okay, question 2. How many games do you play on average per set? This one is overwhelmingly in favor of 500 plus. If you look at it, 500 to 749 is like about 4 to 5 games a day on average for the entirety of the set. 35% answered that. So that means more than a third of people are playing at least 4 to 5 games a day. And then if you look at the 750 to 999, that's 6 games a day. That's almost half of it. That's about 46%. If you include the 1000 plus, that's the majority of the players, which is, this is just hard. Like the 1000 plus is, I don't know, like maybe like some people play like 8 to 10 games a day on average, which is just absolutely bananas. Very few people are playing less than 250 games. And the people that did respond are people who are no longer challenger. There's people like the Riot people. They're not playing that many, for example, compared to when they used to, because they're either working on future sets or that's not what they're doing, or other people whose job isn't really to do that, right? Like Leduc is like, yeah, it's not my job to grind ladder games nearly as much as it is to find out all the the bugs that you can abuse and all the crazy interactions. TFT, he's spending most of his time on PvE. So it's almost like this is almost like 0% in a way, because almost none of them are playing like an efficiency grind. So question 3, how many hours per week on average do you spend watching other TFT players on Twitch? So the possibilities was 1 to 10, 11 to 12, and 20 plus. And I was very surprised how many people chose 20 plus. A lot of people are literally spending a part-time job worth of time watching other TFT players on Twitch. Now, part of it is that they are having it on a second monitor or they're doing something else. But the thing that stands out to me the most is very few people are saying, I don't watch other players, period. I think Like the most notable people are the ones who are streaming a lot and don't have time. So for example, BoxBox said that he doesn't watch other players because he is grinding an insane amount and streaming, and he mainly just focuses on himself, which is completely understandable. But it's a really fascinating thing to look at because, yeah, some people watch like 1 to 10 hours, but the majority of them are hyper engaged, watching many hours, multiple hours a day, perhaps maybe even too many hours. Yes, Demasian Raptor, my mod in chat, is possibly one of those people who are doing that. How many hours per week on average do you spend watching TFT on other platforms? Like, is it important to watch YouTube or TikTok? And the vast majority of them, 69%, nice, said, I don't watch TFT on other platforms. You can tell, by the way, as I'm doing this, I'm becoming more unhinged with my emotes. While I was doing this deck, you could start to see how I descend into madness because I was like starting to get a little crazy with it. When you stare too much at pie charts and stuff like that, something, touch grass. 1 to 10 hours per week, 25%, and then very few spend a lot of time. The only people that said that they spend like 20 hours plus are people who said like Discord, like they watch their friends on Discord, which I thought counted. And hey, it's their survey. They can answer however they want. But for the vast majority of people, they're not watching TFT outside of Twitch. They don't really care that much about YouTube, and they definitely don't care about TikTok and other things like that. Question 5. Who is your most watched TFT streamer? Well, this one was pretty easy to know because K3 Soju is the most popular Twitch streamer in terms of TFT. And what was surprising was that Dish Soap and Setsuko ended up going a little bit more towards Dish Soap's way. Setsuko is the more popular streamer based off numbers, but in terms of what people usually go to learn, people are watching more of Dish Soap, which I thought was kind of cool because Dish Soap has about half, maybe a third as many people usually watching him. But the people that want to learn are going to someone like Dish Soap. And remember, one thing that's really fascinating is the international people that are also answering folks like Dish Soap. Kurum got some answers. I got some answers, which is really cool. And this one thing that apparently my webcam is too big to block, I'm sorry about that, is CN streamers. People just wrote like a Chinese streamer, and there were like 6 or 7 answers about like, I watch like a Chinese streamer like Huanmei or Chitu or so on and so forth. Question number 6, which I thought was interesting as well. Have you ever paid for TFT coaching before? Like, is it worth buying coaching from somebody else? And the overwhelming majority said no. 85%. That's not surprising because I think a lot of people that are able to climb this far actually don't really need something like TFT coaching necessarily. But there are 2 people that stood out that said yes. One is Rain Plosion, who has said yes. The other is Milk, who both of these have made it to the World Championship before and have placed in the final lobby. So there's no shame in paying for TFT coaching. I think it's actually something that might be more normalized as people continue to try to improve. So I thought that's really cool that these 2 people are so good at TFT. They're considered some of the best players that we have on the North American server, and yet they are also people who have paid for TFT coaching. Question number 7. Do you think it's possible for anyone to hit Challenger? This one was a little bit more divisive in terms of opinions. We had 67% people say yes, and then we had 32.5% say no. It was actually kind of a 2-to-1 ratio for the most part, which I thought it was fascinating. So, of course, I wanted to follow up, and I asked some people who said no. So the follow-up responses for the people who said no is one, quote, I don't think people have the mental, which goes back to what we said for reason number 2, right? To establish and build up your mental. So I thought that was fascinating. One person said the game is just too hard, which I thought was fascinating. They were basically saying like they just don't think other people are capable of achieving Challenger because it's just a very, very difficult game to do. The third that I thought was interesting was it's not accessible for too old and too young people, which was technically true, I guess. They're like, yeah, like I don't expect anybody can. They took it literally. They're like, hey, can like a 90-year-old person hit Challengers? Like, maybe not. Can like a 8-year-old kid who like barely understands mouse and keyboard coordination, can they do it on PC? Probably not. So like they like, okay, so technically no. And I was like, all right, I guess that's technically what I'm asking for. So it's all good. The fourth reason, literally not everyone can because a number of slots. So another technicality talking about, hey, if in a vacuum, if everyone could pursue it, would they end up going for Challengers? Like, well, no, because there's only a certain amount of slots that can go out, so not everyone can be Challenger, not everyone can be in the top percentile. So I thought that was fair. And then the last one says, I didn't understand the question, which I don't understand how you don't understand the question. So they said no because they're like, I don't really get it. The question is pretty straightforward. Do you think it's possible for anyone to hit Challenger? I don't know how I could rephrase the question. I think the thing to take away from these follow-up responses is outside of whether or not you have the good mental, most people just think that it actually is. I think a lot of these people who are no are actually secretly yes, but they're like, some people are answering the question on a technicality as opposed to the spirit of the question, which is, do you think anyone can? And the answer is, if you are willing to put in the time and effort, and apparently if you're not too old or too young, then yeah, I think you can. I think most people are saying that for the most part, these reasons are not actually reasons. They're just excuses or technicalities. Question number 8, how important are study groups for improving? Half the field said somewhat important, and then it was split. Actually, a pretty reasonable split down the middle. A lot of people did not feel like it was that important. Some people said in their follow-ups, they were saying like that they think it's important if you want to get better beyond Challenger. But if you are trying to get to Challenger in the first place, you don't really need a study group. Other people aren't going to be helping you, climb necessarily in the sense of sitting in your seat and clicking for you. Just basically form a study group with yourself, but you have to study. The most important thing isn't the group. The most important word is study. Question number 9, how many hours do you spend per week studying stats? Over half the field says at least 1 to 10 hours a week, which means they're going to be looking at it a little bit every day on average, like maybe 1 hour a day, give or take, probably a little bit under that. 11.9% answered 11 to 20 hours per week, which is a lot. And a few people said 20 plus hours a week, which is insanity to me. That's just, at that point, you're just playing spreadsheet simulator. Like, you're just looking at stats nonstop, like 3 hours a day. Yeah, right. Full-time job looking at stats. There's 3 people. It is worth noting that every one of these people who said 20 plus hours a week, I think the lowest ranked player is like 1100, 1200 LP player. Just putting it out there. I only pull up stats while I'm playing games is also a really big answer, which maybe goes to show you that a lot of these players actually don't really know the stats. All they do is just read stats while they play, and they use it as an assistance tool during the game. Question 10. Drop in more pictures and emotes as I start to descend deeper into madness. Also to help you guys who have ADHD like me. What website do you use most for learning and improving? And I think this one's pretty straightforward. I threw this one out just in case there's some really interesting answers, but I expected this one. The vast majority of people said tactics.tools for all of it. I think we had like 90 responses out of the 126. Say tactics.tools. Second most popular answer was Twitch, which I thought was really interesting. Third was Meta TFT, and fourth right here is TFT Academy, which I'm covering. Bad job by me to try to cover that up. But this is pretty straightforward. So if you want to learn through stats, the general consensus is use tactics.tools, and you don't have to do things too complicated. For example, a lot of people just use the basic explorer. They don't have to even do anything advanced, like filtering in for all these different kinds of things. All they do is just say, what are the stats if you have X unit with X augment and, this trait? What's the best augment setup for that? And people end up just playing off of that. And that's a lot of basic use of stats, but that's probably all you need. You don't have to go crazy with stats. Question number 11, do you read other top players' tier lists and guides? And 70% said yes. So the vast majority of them also did say that it's worth reading what other people do, like things such as TFT Academy or Robin Song's TFT Handbook. Slogason puts out his own guides. Ramblin used to do his own, and there's a ton of other, right? There's actually a new wave of creators who are making comps and tier lists and all kinds of guides for you guys. There's more guides than ever before to jump into and read other players' opinions. And a lot of them say yes. And a huge portion of the people that say no are people who are like doing their own thing. Like I mentioned how Boxfest doesn't watch other top streamers. He doesn't really read other people's guides and so on and so forth. And I think that's pretty consistent with some people's behavior patterns. So the true percentage of this is probably about half of it, about 15%. One thing that's in general really interesting that I heard a long time ago was you don't play TFT by yourself. And that applies to guides where you read other people's opinions and thoughts on what is good. That applies to stats. Stats is a way that you're playing with other people because other people are inputting data for you. And you are like reaping the benefits of that. You're reading what other people are doing. Question 12. Do you consider yourself good at the game? This was a really fun series of questions because the question after this, I think a lot of people know. Do you consider yourself good at the game? 70% of people said yes. And surprisingly, a huge amount of people, 29%, said no. A lot of humble pie here. People think they aren't good at the game. But then this is a part 2 question. Question number 13. Consider other challenger players good at the game. And about a similar amount of people said no. Actually, about 3/4 of the people said yes, they think challenger players are good at the game, and 1/4 of them said no. And you might think, okay, well, isn't it just like the same people kind of saying like yes, no, and kind of like splitting it up? But there's actually some follow-up where I kind of broke down people's individual responses. 13 people said no, meaning no, they don't think they're good at the game, and no, they don't think other challenger players are good at the game. But I want to say that 3 of these people, out of all the 13 people, only 3 of them ever qualified for a world championship. 19 people said, yes, I think I'm good at the game. No, other challenger players are not good at the game. And all 19 players qualified for at least the regional finals. So all these players that said, yes, I'm good at the game, and no, other people are not, have a reason to believe it. They have ego, they have results, they have achievements, and they say definitively, no, I do not think other challenger players are good at the game. 21 players said, no, I don't think I'm good at the game, but yes, I think other challenger players are good at the game. And that's a lot of people who, work at Riot, for example, or people who were used to be challengers and they're no longer are, like Nature's BF, right? He's like a tournament organizer now, but he was formerly challenged. Like, no, I don't think I'm good right now, but yeah, I think other challenger players are good. So there's a lot of people who are very humble about that and just recognize, like, yeah, maybe right now my current form isn't good, but I do think on general, the challenger players that are there said yes. Question 14. Do you read and watch the patch notes before playing? I thought this one was really interesting as well, because I expected way more people to say no, but 93% said yes. You could have fooled me, man. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Apparently, they do read the patch notes before playing. And this is a lot of the people who claim that they don't, by the way. They're like, oh, I don't read anything. And that is not true. They all read the patch notes. They just don't remember it. Or at least they're not reading very closely. Question 15. At what LP is considered elite tier to you? 1500 is where a lot of people voted and said that it's a really good benchmark. Then the second highest was about 1200. A few people said like 1600 plus, which is pretty crazy, but for the most part, it's around this 12, 13, 14, 1500 tier. I got some other people who had some follow-up responses. So one of them said LP is fake, which is a really common adage in TFT, which I think is a healthy mindset. 2, Challenger itself should be considered elite, which I think a lot of people can agree or disagree, but I thought that was interesting. I think Appies wrote that. Someone said that you don't have to have high LP, but you could have also won a noteworthy tournament, which I think is also a fair thing to say, because if you are proving yourself on ladder, there's the other way you can prove it, which is just winning tournaments. Someone said that's something really interesting. There's even another tier above elite, and I think that's what they've put people like Setsuko and Hwanmei in like a godhood status, right? Like, okay, these people are just even a cut above, like YBY from Vietnam, just Soap from North America. I thought that was fascinating. Someone said if they're better than me, which I thought was going back to the ego thing of like, no, like, yes, I'm good at the game. No, the other challenger players are bad at the game. And also the elite LP is where I'm at. I thought that was so funny, because they're just basically saying like, I'm the bar. If they're higher LP than me, then I consider them elite. Question 16, did hitting Challenger make you like TFT more or less? This question, a lot of people basically just said the same, but there's a lot of people that said more, which I thought was really interesting. I thought that by making this question, a lot of people would say the same or less, because it feels like by getting to Challenger, like you've beat the game, right? It's almost like in some people's minds, if you get Challenger, what else is there to do? But a lot of people, it was the most popular answer, said more. So hitting Challenger inspired them, made them like the game even more, and continue to be part of the community today, which I thought was fascinating. So the conclusions. We can draw some conclusions from this survey. 1, you need to play a lot. You need to play a lot of games. You can't just sit in chat and watch and backseat and say, you should have slammed that belt, or, that was a bloodthirster diff. You can't just be in chat. You can't just be typing in comments. You can't just be reading on Reddit and in Discord servers. You have to play the game. 75% of Challenger players answered over 250 games. 50% of them play over 500 games. So what are you waiting for? Cue it up. 2, you should study a lot. Not only do you play a lot, but you need to study a lot. 70% of responders watch at least 10 hours plus a week. 70% also study at least 1 hour of stats per week. But only one top player said that they don't watch other players, and that was Chaos from Singapore. He made it to the World Championship in Set 10. The rest were content creators / retired players. So you basically gotta find some way to work in playing and studying. If you just play, you might hit walls. If you just study, you're not going to get enough volume to hit Challenger. Well, here's something that's interesting. Things that you don't need to do, which is kind of a summary of the things that we talked about. You don't need to have a study group, as we've established. A lot of people think that's not important. The key word of that is study, not group. You don't need to pay for coaching, even though some people have. You don't need to have high gamer IQ. A lot of people say it's mental. It's not about your capability or your cognitive ability. 4, you don't need to copy other players, even though it does help. 5, even though you might be watching this on YouTube, or maybe you watch a lot of YouTube guys, you don't have to actually watch it, because a lot of people are watching on Twitch and they've done just fine. And 6, you don't need a one trick of comp, because that was one of the things that people overwhelmingly didn't write. Like, I was wondering if people were going to push a lot towards that, but a lot of responses in my push to challenger, they said that, you know, it's about fundamentals, about other things. You don't have to do that. And the ultimate conclusion is, if you hit challenger, that is a great achievement. You should consider yourself good at the game. I think that's ultimately something that we can come to a conclusion of. Yes, not everyone answered the same exact way, but I think that based off of my survey from it, a lot of people like to use challenger as a way for them to think that, like, humble bragging. They say like, oh, I'm challenger, I'm not that good. All I did was like do this, copy dish soap. All I did was read TFT Academy. All I did was, you know, abuse this patch. But if you hit challenger even a single time, based on the percentile, based on the mental obstacles you overcome, based on what other challenger players are saying, it is a great achievement. You should consider yourself good at the game. All right, I have some bonus questions, because it's not all just like, you know, yeah. What was the best TFT set ever? And 33% of the people answered set 6. They loved augments. Augments was a really big deal for them. That was a huge game changer, and that's not a surprise. I expected set 6 to be the overwhelming favorite, but it wasn't. It just ended up being one of many sets that people liked. Another set that was the second most popular was set 4, the chosen mechanic, which is hilarious because so many of you, I couldn't tell that you guys really liked it because of how much you guys complained about headliners in set 10. You could have fooled me. I did not know that you guys liked chosen that much, but maybe it was because set 4 itself was nostalgic and the first time we went through it as opposed to the second time. There's probably many reasons. And also set 4 was very good. Let's put it out there on the record. Set 4 was a great set. Set 8 hero augments was the third most popular answer, which blew my mind. I could not believe that. I was like, what? You guys really liked set 8 hero augments that much? Set 3 galaxies was there, and then I think it was tied with set 10. This was set 10. The graph didn't show this for some reason, but this is set 10. Someone answered set 11, by the way. I think this is one person answered set 11. Oh, no, wait. No, one person answered set 7 dragons. Who is this person? I need to go back and check. Hold on a second. Who said set 7 was their favorite set? This needs to be rectified. I need to find this out. Give me 1 second. I'm breaking the fourth wall. Was Beppo Carrot? Okay. You know what? Is it because that was the highest LP Beppo ever achieved? Oh man, I had no idea. Hey, listen, man. Everyone has their own personal preferences. You can't really disagree with someone's opinion on whether or not they think is the best TFT set ever. But hey, he loves set 7. Sorry to put you on blast, Beppo, but I just needed to find out who it was. If you guys missed it, by the way, I did a complete TFT rankings video with Saint Vicious and Ray. I guess this is a kind of a spoiler, but we went through all of the metas, every single mechanic, all the different things, and we graded it. We gave it scores. We gave it like ratings of 1 to 5 or 0 to 6 if it was really, really good. And overall, we did a reflection on set 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Definitely check it out. It's really fun. And Saint and Ray were really good guests. I think it's a really fun video. You should go check it out. Bonus question number 2. I promise the last question. Do you think you'll talk to any friends you've made via TFT in 5 years? This question, unfortunately, I realized didn't make it halfway through sending the survey. So actually, a lot of people didn't respond to this, but I got enough where I felt like it was an accurate reflection. 64% said yes. 21 said not sure. I asked a couple people. They said, well, it's just because I don't know, you know, where I will be in life, so who knows, right? Another technicality. And some people just said, no, I'm not gonna talk to anybody I made friends with in TFT. Why would I? I was like, okay, sure, I'll leave it to it. But a lot of people think that they will, because they think that TFT and the camaraderie you developed and the community that we have and fostered is a great thing, and that they will still talk to their friends in 5 years, which I thought was great. And that's it. Thank you so much for everyone who sat through this presentation. Now, how do you get Challenger? You can check out all the stuff like my tier list, tftacademy.com, stream, twitch.tv/Frodan. Maybe you want to learn some guides, youtube.com/@FrodanTV, or even watch some of my ridiculous clips in games like my Story Champion, Garen reroll games. I'm not sure how I keep getting tougher with that, but it's fun. youtube.com/@Frodan2. Thanks for watching, and I guess I'll see you guys next time.